Hey everyone, it's Nathan and welcome to Hail. It is the end of May, meaning that it's time for another Wrapped episode. This is the series where I talk about all my first time watches from the previous month. I also acknowledge the books that I read, life updates, different things that happened in the last month. So at the beginning of the month, I watched 10 new movies for my 24-hour movie marathon. If you want to hear my thoughts on them, go ahead and check out that video. Then I watched the 1974 Billy Wilder film, The Front Page. Now this movie stars Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. If you've seen the movie His Girl Friday, this is based on the same play that His Girl Friday is based off of, but I prefer His Girl Friday to this. I think that casting the main character as a female in His Girl Friday was a lot better. I just think it worked better in my opinion. Jack Lemmon still did well, but because I've seen His Girl Friday, I just kind of lean towards that one a little bit more. While everyone else was watching Star Wars movies on May the 4th, I actually watched Mitchells vs. the Machines. The previews for this looked amazing from day one, even back when it was called Connected. I was very intrigued by this movie, mostly because it was from the guys who did Spider-Verse. It didn't disappoint. The jokes land, the animation is very well done. It's got some emotional background to it, which gives it some points. I guess the only complaint would be it's kind of like that Lego movie-itis, where when you've seen it once, it's hilarious, but when you watch it again, I'm a little worried that it won't be as funny the second time because all the jokes landed so well the first time, but the second time they might not land quite as well. At least that's how I feel about Lego Movie, and I'm kind of worried that it will be the same with Mitchells vs. the Machines, but only time will tell. I then watched The French Connection, which I covered in my 25 movie challenge for the 1970s. If you'd missed it there, I wasn't too big of a fan of The French Connection. I find it to be pretty overrated. I think that what I need to do is in a few years when I've kind of forgotten about this movie, I need to give it another watch and then just see what my thoughts are at that point, because right now I'm not the biggest fan of it. I always love being able to watch my own movies in my collection, and that was the case with this month's watch, Picnic at Hanging Rock, directed by Peter Weir. If you're to buy the Criterion, I recommend buying this edition. It's the dual format edition on Amazon. I got it probably over a year ago at this point, so I don't know if it's still in stock, but the reason I recommend this one is because it actually comes with the original book as well. However, Bailey Walsh let me know that the Criterion book is missing a chapter of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bailey, but from what I understand, the author came out with a new chapter several years later, and that chapter is not included in this edition of the book. As far as the movie itself goes, though, I was very mesmerized by it. It's one of those movies that moves a little slowly, but I never felt bored. I was very intrigued with the plot. I'm slowly trying to watch all the Muppets movies, and so this month I saw The Muppets Take Manhattan for the first time. You know, it's a cute movie about the Muppets trying to make it big on Broadway. There's a lot of cute little scenes of them singing to different producers trying to get them to buy their show so that they can perform in Manhattan live. I really like that aspect of it. I think that of all the Muppets movies I've watched this year, this one might be my least favorite, but it's not to say it was bad because I still enjoyed it for the most part. It just felt really long and it didn't feel almost as quirky or memorable or as relatable as the other Muppets movies do. Miss Piggy roller skating after me is one of my new biggest nightmares. I think what they did is they had a human in Miss Piggy's costume, and the way she moves so fast as she's roller skating, absolutely horrifying. Local libraries coming in clutch. I've been renting a lot of movies, especially Best Picture winners. One of the Best Picture winners I checked out this month was Gentleman's Agreement. This movie is all about anti-Semitism, and Gregory Peck's main character, he's a journalist who pretends to be a Jewish man to see how differently he is treated when he's pretending to be Jewish. It says a lot about the culture and history of this time period from the 40s. World War II had ended just a few years earlier, and it shows that people were still very much, against Jewish people, which is unfortunate. You see a few scenes in this that are just really cringy in the sense that, not like cringy in the sense that you're not enjoying what you're watching, cringy in the sense that people could actually be that messed up towards a person of a certain faith. And so I think that the movie hit on all those points really well. Something that took me out of the movie a little bit is it seems a bit too melodramatic for its own good. Also, Gregory Peck has such a deep voice and he's such a good actor, but in some of the scenes where he's trying to be emotional, and I can't remember if he cries or not, but the scenes where he's really exhibiting his emotions, it's almost hard to take him serious because it sounds like he's still talking the exact same way as he always does. But I enjoyed this movie for the most part. The overall theme is still relevant, and I'm glad it won Best Picture. Continuing on with my Best Picture watches, I watched Oliver from 1968. I didn't realize until the intermission of this movie that Oliver and Company, the Disney animated movie, is based on Oliver Twist. Like, I was watching it and I was like, this feels so familiar. This whole storyline feels so familiar. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, this is what Oliver and Company is based off of. This makes so much more sense. But anyways, I was much more impressed with Oliver than I thought I would be. They had some catchy songs. The little kid who plays Dodger is really talented. In fact, he was nominated for an Oscar for Best Acting in a Supporting Role, and I always think it's cool when these child actors get nominated for Oscars. In an attempt to watch more Audrey Hepburn, this was actually before I announced my new 25 movies challenge, but I watched Wait Until Dark, and this is a movie that has her and Alan Arkin in it. She plays a blind woman who is robbed because she is in possession of a doll that she should not be in possession of. The bad guys are trying to get the doll back, and they're trying to go up against her, a blind woman. And so obviously it gives you plenty of suspenseful moments. For being made in the 60s, I think it was really well done. Her character at times reminded me of the main character from 10 Cloverfield Lane, just with her cleverness and her way of thinking through different problems. As part of my 25 movie challenge for the 1970s, I watched Frenzy, an Alfred Hitchcock movie, one of his final movies, in fact, the penultimate Alfred Hitchcock film. And for how much I love Alfred Hitchcock, I wasn't a big fan of this one. For me, it just didn't feel like an Alfred Hitchcock movie. For one, it's the first movie I've seen of his filmography from the 70s, and so that felt a little off. Two, Jackson and I, my friend, both agreed that it's because there's not too many big name actors in this movie, whereas Hitchcock normally works with the big actors. And then on top of that, I just didn't like the plot, honestly. I didn't like what I was watching. It just wasn't very enjoyable. In fact, I would put this as a lower tier Hitchcock film for me. On May 20th, it was James Stewart's birthday, and so in honor of his birthday, I posted a video on this channel of my top 10 favorite movies from James Stewart, so definitely make sure to check out that video. But in addition to that, I honored him by watching a movie from him for the first time. That movie was The Flight of the Phoenix. Now, I wasn't aware of what this movie would be about going into it. I just knew that Richard Attenborough was in it, and I like him as an actor from what I've seen of him in Jurassic Park and The Great Escape. So I wanted to see him team up with Jimmy Stewart, and it's an enjoyable movie. It's actually a survival tale where they're flying a plane, it crashes in the desert, and they're trying to get the plane back up and running again so they can get out of the desert and survive. And so I'm always intrigued by survival tales. I actually really like that plot. I think where The Flight of the Phoenix went wrong is it's just way too long. Like, I would shed maybe 45 minutes off of this movie. It's just kind of like they're stuck in the desert, they're trying to get off, and that's the plot for like over 2 hours, and so it just kind of gets boring after a while. However, James Stewart did good, and so did Richard Attenborough. I debated saving a Very Brave sequel for my 24-hour movie marathon next year for the birth year category, but I ended up watching it anyways because I didn't want to wait that long. I'm kind of glad I didn't save it for the marathon. I don't think it would have been a fun movie to watch for the marathon. It was very dumb, wasn't as funny as the first Brady Bunch parody movie. Sure, it had like a funny scene, funny two scenes I would say, but everything else was just really dumb to me, and I don't think it's quite as iconic as the first Brady Bunch movie. Stalker was the penultimate movie I watched for my 25 movies challenge of the 1970s. Gosh, I keep using the word penultimate. You can thank my high school English teacher for me using that word. That's like the only vocabulary word I remember we went over. It's just a very mesmerizing movie. It's long, but because it's so intriguing, you don't get bored at any point. At least I didn't. I went into it knowing that it was a slow moving film, and so maybe that also helped me a little bit. After this movie ended, my friend Jackson and I, we had a 3-hour long conversation. Only about 20 minutes of it was devoted to Stalker, but it sounds so much cooler when I say we had a 3-hour conversation on it. But still, we both had many things to say about this movie. It was nonstop, just theories, giving our thoughts on the movie, questions that we still have that the movie doesn't really answer. It leaves open-ended. And overall, I was really satisfied with Stalker. The final movie I watched for my 25 movie challenge was All the President's Men, and I liked it so much that I went and bought the digibook at my local Zia store, and I was glad they had it, first off, but this is a very well done movie. What All the President's Men does with journalism is what Raiders of the Lost Ark does with archaeology. It just makes a profession that shouldn't be as exciting so exciting. Like, after this movie, I wanted to be a journalist, yet I'm already set on my career path and everything. It's like when you watch Indiana Jones, you want to be an archaeologist after watching those movies because they're just so exciting. So I think they did this movie very well. It is suspenseful. You wouldn't think that with a journalism story. Both Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman give great performances. There are just so many different moments in this movie where I was kind of at the edge of my seat, and I really enjoyed what I saw the whole way through. I then saw Breakfast at Tiffany's for the first time. Now, this one did count towards my new 25 movies challenge. At this point, if you haven't heard, my new 25 movie challenge is devoted to watching 5 actors and 5 movies from each of those actors. So I have chosen 5 different actors. They are Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, Audrey Hepburn, Harold Lloyd, and Sidney Poitier. So the first movie I watched for this challenge is Breakfast at Tiffany's. I know that it's so iconic. It's definitely Audrey Hepburn's most iconic role. It was good. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, and I think that it's a little overhyped. I know that some people definitely love it a lot. I didn't really like Audrey Hepburn's character too much. But I will say the positive from this movie for me was when she sings Moon River outside her window. Like, I could rewatch that scene for hours. It is just... It's so peaceful, and if I could just have Audrey Hepburn sing that to me, that'd be great. Buddy Buddy is another Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau team up that I watched, and it was funnier than the front page, but with that being said, Billy Wilder has just made so many other better movies. I feel like every time I talk about Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau teaming up together, I don't really have too many good things to say. You're probably asking yourself, why do you keep watching these movies, Nathan? It's because I'm trying to see all of Billy Wilder's movies, and so I can rank them on his birthday. So this was his last movie he ever made, and it's not the worst I've seen from him, but it's far from the best. I laughed a few times, but it just doesn't really stand out to me. Another James Stewart movie I rented from my local library was Shenandoah, which was a lot sadder than I expected it to be. Despite its slow beginning, the last hour was much more entertaining. Some moments kind of gave me chills, got me a little emotional. There's a particular scene where James Stewart is at a gravesite at the end of the movie. I won't spoil it, but that scene where he's at the gravesite was really touching. All right, we've got 3 more movies. Next up, Quiet Place 2. I loved this movie. I loved it. It was an improvement on the first movie. I just feel like it's rare when like there's a good follow-up to the movie, and so we're very blessed to have Quiet Place 2. I'm gonna go into spoiler territory a little bit, and so if you don't want to hear spoilers, just mute the video. I'll do this when it's done. I loved how at the beginning when they're at the baseball game, Cillian Murphy and Millicent Simmons' character, they foreshadow the dive scene by her telling him what dive means. That boat dock scene was one of the most exciting scenes of the whole movie, if not the most exciting. At least I think it was my favorite scene of the movie. And that scene, how he mentioned the dive and she knew what he was talking about, so freaking cool. Another thing I loved about A Quiet Place 2 is its use of transitions. Like, for an example, a character will look to the left, and right when they look to the left, it shows a character that we know is on the other side of the island. However, it makes it look like they were looking at that character because they transition to the next scene, to the other story that's going on. I thought that the editors and John Krasinski were really good at transitioning from scene to scene. Plus, whenever something exciting happens, there's always another exciting thing happening in the other characters' stories, and so it was just so exciting. I don't think there was ever a dull moment, really, whereas Quiet Place 1, it's pretty boring the first 45 minutes or so. Not too much happens, and then it's really exciting the second half, but in Quiet Place 2, I feel like the whole movie was very intense and exciting. Okay, you can unmute. Yay! Safety Last is a movie that I watched the same night that I saw A Quiet Place 2. I felt like I was in a mood for a good silent movie after watching A Quiet Place 2. This was my introduction to Harold Lloyd. In fact, it's the first movie from his filmography that I will be adding to that new 25 movie challenge. And I think it was a great way to start the challenge because I really like Harold Lloyd, and I'm excited to see more of his movies. The movie was just so well done. I really liked watching this movie, and it was hilarious too. And then I watched what's possibly my least favorite first time watch of the month, and that was Gigi. He's the Best Picture winner from 1958, I believe. I guess I want to recognize the costume design, the colors. It's a very colorful movie. And then I also like Maurice Chevalier. He plays the uncle in the movie. He's the only character I liked. Everyone else, especially the main guy who's like falling in love with Gigi, that guy's a jerk. He does not deserve Gigi at all. It made me thoroughly dislike the movie even more. The movie was so long. It was like 2 hours long, but it felt forever because I wasn't into the story. Anyways, I could keep ranting about the movie, but instead I'm just going to move on. So in the April Wrapped episode, I mentioned that I would be reading Goblet of Fire and trying to finish Order of the Phoenix in my May episode. I'm happy to say I finished both of them. Here we are. These bad boys are here. I finished Order of the Phoenix yesterday, May 31st. I was right at the deadline, but I finished it, and I'm right on track with my Harry Potter schedule. Both of them were enjoyable. The book is so much better than the movie for Goblet of Fire, so I don't know who I'm telling that to, but for what it's worth, that's Nathan's opinion on the Goblet of Fire book. The Order of the Phoenix is one of my favorite books in the whole series. I love both the book and the movie. Sure, the movie leaves some things out, but I mean, for as big as this freaking book is, 870 pages, the movie does it justice. I also really like this cover with Umbridge right there. She is such a creep, and if you think she's bad in the movie, just read the book. She's even worse. So in June, I will be reading 6 and 7, hopefully. As far as life updates go, as you are aware, I went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter this last month, and I made a whole entire separate video on my adventures there, as well as what I bought there. So if you want to check that out, you can click the card that's in the video. I can't think of what else I did in May. Like, that trip was the biggest thing that happened, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a sneak peek of June now, with what you can expect from the channel. So as you know, I started my Summer of Harry Potter series, and so this Thursday, June 3rd, the first episode will come out. That is my personal connection to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The following 3 Thursdays of the month will include my videos for Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, and Goblet of Fire. Other videos you can expect from June, a Criterion related video on the 15th, as well as my Billy Wilder complete filmography ranked list. This has been something that I've been working on since November. That's why I've had so many Billy Wilder films in my Wrapped series. You're probably going to see a few more in the June episode. If you're unfamiliar with Billy Wilder, he made famous movies such as Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, Double Indemnity, Witness for the Prosecution, Ace in the Hole, just a lot of classic iconic movies, and so I'm really excited to rank his filmography later this month. But that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out the other videos I posted in May, and also be on the lookout for any posts that I update you with. I've done 2 collaborations recently, and I will be sharing those in my posts, and so be on the lookout for that too. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day.